Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good morning. It is 6 o'clock, 6:05, 6:06. It's O'Connor and
Do
Company.
I hear 6:07?
It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've got a great lineup today. At 6:35, Christopher Pilkerton, Trump's former Small Business Administrator, on Jerome Powell's interest rate announcement that came out late last week. At 7:05, Joe DeGeneva. 7:35, we'll talk to Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. And at 8:35, we'll talk to Niall Gardner of Heritage Foundation on the UK's war on free speech. I'm Julie Gunlock alongside Larry O'Connor. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. Welcome back, Julie Gunlock, from
you.
your long vacation. It was
Thank
so
you.
long. I can't believe you were gone so long.
Joining us now is Mark Pennak. He's president of Maryland Shale Issue. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
So the Federal Appeals Court ruled on Friday. They ruled in favor of Maryland's requirement for obtaining a handgun license. This is a blow to gun rights supporters. Tell us about this decision and what the next steps are.
Well, Maryland provides in its law, it's called a handgun qualification license, that in order to acquire a handgun, and that acquire means by any means, including by gift, you have to have a handgun qualification license. In order to get a handgun qualification license, you have to go through 4 hours of training and go to a range with a qualified instructor and fire one live round. Not 5, not 10, one. I'm an instructor, and I've always found that a live round requirement to be a little short is absurd. But setting that aside, the court held that those requirements were constitutional because of it qualified under Step 1 of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin analysis. So Step 1 is simply asked whether the conduct is covered by the text of the Constitution, which of course protects the right to keep and bear arms. Now, every court to have addressed the issue has held the right to acquire a firearm is part and partial of that right to keep and bear arms, because you can't keep and bear what you cannot acquire. But the courts held nonetheless that it was okay under the text of the Constitution to basically ban the acquisition of firearms unless you jump through all these hoops imposed by Maryland. And it did so without looking at the history or the traditions of firearm regulation in the United States. Maryland is quite unique in these requirements. I mean, I don't think any other state in the country, say Oregon, has this many requirements for just acquiring a handgun for self-protection in the home. By the way, this doesn't include outside the home at all. The analysis is, to put it politely, astonishing.
Thank you for that a detailed breakdown on this, Mr. Pennak, because I'm confused. It seems like the last several Second Amendment decisions that have come down from courts of appeal or from the Supreme Court have seemed to lean more toward gun ownership and gun rights and the plain language of the Second Amendment. This appears to be an outlier, or am I misreading that? Where did this come from? Especially a 14-2 decision like this seems so overwhelming from the Fourth Circuit.
It's really 14-6 because the concurring opinions also took issue with the court's analysis. They went from Step 1. They said this obviously is covered by the text of the Second Amendment, but we think it's going to be okay because the Supreme Court in Bruin decision said that for carry permits outside the home, you can have a permit system that may include training, for example. But there is no historical analysis that supports for the acquisition inside the home, where the Supreme Court held in Heller that the right of self-defense is most acute. So it's really is an outlier in many senses. So
it sounds to me like they're
cover it all.
It sounds to me like they're trying to treat a person trying to get a firearm for self-defense. Pretend, let's say it's a woman who is being stalked and abused by a man, and she wants to sort of have some sort of equalization and a way to defend herself should this man come and terrorize her again. And they're saying, well, this is like buying a car and getting licensed for a car. You got to go through training. You got to get your license. You got to pass a test. You got to do all these things. Like These things are very, very different things. And by the way, the right to own a car is not embedded in the Bill of Rights.
Exactly right. And that is the analogy you hear a lot from people who simply want you to do whatever the state wants you to do and jump through all the hoops. But as you point out, the right to own a car or do other activities in your life is not a constitutional right.
Is this also these license requirements? Is this also a way of sort of backdoor getting in, like a tracking of those who own guns, keeping track of them through the state? Is that sort of some of the goal here?
Yes. It's long been the rule in Maryland in order to, when you buy a handgun, that the handgun is immediately registered. But that registration process did not include fingerprints. To get a handgun qualification license, you have to submit fingerprints, which immediately is included within the FBI's vast database of fingerprints. So that if you leave Maryland and go anywhere in the country, the FBI is going to have those fingerprints.
Is the real sticking point here the training that is required versus the background check, or is this both of these things your organization finds objectionable?
Well, the irony is that the background check is also required by a separate statutory scheme called the 77R process.
That's what I thought. Yeah. So
yeah. So
it's because I keep seeing proponents for this lumping the background check in, but that's other than the fact that it's an extra layer that the state is requiring that is already required. The real objection is the costliness and timeliness of that training, I would think.
Well, that's true, but think how the background check works here. You have to do the very extensive background check, including a mental health check. You have to waive all your HIPAA rights. And the next day, you may get your qualification license. And if you go the day after that to get actual handgun, you do another background check. The same one.
God.
So I always like to go back, sir, and sort of say, all right, what problem are they really trying to solve here? And when you look at gun crime in Maryland, in Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Baltimore City, I've got to think that the majority of the violence caused by criminals with handguns are obtaining those firearms illegally anyway. It's not like they're going to a regular gun shop and they're not going to go through this process. This is really just...
This is an obstacle and nothing less. Maryland has long been very hostile to the acquisition of handguns. I mean, it goes all the way back to several administrations and governor administrations. So this is simply a way of creating as many obstacles as you possibly can. For example, the requirement to fire one live round, that can only be done on a range because it's illegal to fire almost all of Maryland, urban Maryland, anywhere other than a range. So that means if you're in the middle of Baltimore, there are no ranges in Baltimore City. You have to travel outside of Baltimore, which means you have to have a car. Because the places where these ranges are located are simply not accessible otherwise. Either that or you have to have your instructor who you have to contact and pay, by the way. This is not free. So it's a couple of $100 to pay for the instructor. It's another $70-some-odd to pay for the fingerprinting and the background check. You have to pay for all this. It's not free.
And by the way, this is a law brought in by then Governor Martin O'Malley. It's been languishing there and facing many court challenges. Do you expect this one to go to the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll check in with you then.
Well, I've been litigating a lot in the Supreme Court, and I did so I've been a lawyer for 50 years, so I've done a lot of Supreme Court work, especially at the U.S. Department of Justice, where I used to work. So this has cert petition, as we said in our press release, was this cert petition writes itself.
Yeah. All right, Mark Pennak, president of Maryland Shall Issue, who will be leading the charge on that fight up to the Supreme Court on this, but it's a 6 decision, according to our guest, and it appears that this onerous training and background check that Maryland has instituted by Martin O'Malley back in 2013 will continue until the day they get to the Supremes. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to talk to you.
Also would have been a great opportunity for then very popular Governor Larry Hogan to do something about this when he had all of that great popularity and sort of make the case for some fundamental Republican issues like the Second Amendment.
Would be nice, wouldn't it,
That
Lane?
was not prioritized during his 8 years.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Vacations are great, aren't they? You just came back from vacation.
Yes.
While you were gone, we had Mercedes and Patrice and Molly Hemingway
Yes.
fill in the gaps here while you were gone. I'm about to go on vacation. We'll have a couple of guys coming in here, but really you and Patrice are going to be running things while I'm gone, and Mercedes. That's the thing about going on vacation. You always make sure someone's there to cover for you, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Joe Biden just got back from spending a week in Santa Ynez, California, at the home of a multi-billionaire. And then he didn't even stop in D.C., just flew straight over to Dover, Delaware, where he's going to spend the next 9 days on vacation.
At his own beach house.
Yes, to take a break from his Pacific Ocean
Okay.
7-day
In
vacation.
In defense, sometimes I need a vacation after my vacation.
Sure.
I mean, you should have seen me yesterday. It was laundry, it was unpacking, it was doing all this stuff. I'm tired.
Understandable.
So, maybe that's...
You think
maybe
that's what's going on with Joe?
Yeah, I
And
have to do a
Jill?
lot of laundry and unpacking.
Well, they did show pictures of him in this giant, sprawling vineyard mansion in Santa Ynez, which is not a bad place, by the way, where he was watching. It's like, here's Jill and Joe getting ready to watch Kamala's acceptance speech. It's like, well, if he spent his whole vacation watching that bleep show in Chicago, then yeah, he probably does need a break.
I seem to recall Democrats getting upset about Supreme Court justices going to their friends' houses and staying there, right?
Now you're telling me there's a double standard?
There's something have you heard anything about that? It's like you're not allowed to vacation with your good
I've
friends.
heard about that.
Yeah.
Since Joe Biden announced that he was dropping out of the race 34 days ago, he has spent 6 days at the White House. This begs the question, like I said.
Do we need a president?
I'm going to be gone. Andrew Langer's going to be, Joe Conch is going to be here one of the days. You and Patrice are going to be covering for me.
Yeah.
You were gone on vacation.
Yeah.
Mercedes, Patrice,
Right.
Molly Hemingway. Who's covering for Joe Biden right now? Isn't this kind of a critical job that maybe someone should be sort of staying on top of?
Yeah.
Did you see the Houthi terrorists blow up an oil tanker in the Red Sea over the weekend?
Well, we did, but Joe didn't.
Did you see Israel sort of amping up and taking out some Hezbollah missile locations and rocket locations
North
in
Korea
Lebanon?
just launched a bunch of drone
Yeah.
suicide bombs. Everything's fine.
Do you think maybe a commander-in-chief would be appropriate at this point? Somebody is he doing anything? They put out his schedule for the week.
Okay, wait. How many weeks have we gone that Trump was almost assassinated? I mean, and we still don't have answers.
That's
okay?
fair, yeah.
And it's all a big mystery, and we don't know. Okay, how many cell phones does this guy have? Who was he in touch with from foreign country? No curiosity, no interest. Kamala isn't talking to the press. Tim Waltz doesn't talk to the press. I mean, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
The president's schedule was put out for today, Monday, August 26th. There's an out-of-town pool of reporters representing AP, Reuters, Bloomberg. TV pool crew will be ABC, and the print crew will be Washington Post. The schedule is as follows. 10 a.m., the president receives the president's daily brief. That's closed to the press. That's it. That's
I
the
would
end
be
of the
really
schedule.
good
That's
at
his
this
schedule.
job. I thought it was hard.
Yeah, apparently not.
Apparently not.
Apparently not. Today at 10 a.m., Joe Biden
You get jets and helicopters.
coming off his 7 days vacation
Your kids
in
can
Santa
do
Barbara.
coke in the
And
coat
now,
room.
facing 9 days of vacation in Delaware, he will show up to work at 10 a.m. and he will be briefed.
And that's
and
it.
that will be the end of his day.
That's it.
What do you think Jill's going to do today?
I don't know.
Scream at the
She's-
walls in her bedroom.
Yeah, take the covers off a couple couches.
Yeah.
Make dresses.
As Donald Trump said on the X platform, quoting now, "Who is negotiating for us in the Middle East? Bombs are dropping all over the place. Sleepy Joe is sleeping on a beach in California, viciously exiled by the Democrats. And Comrade Kamala is doing a campaign bus tour with Tampon Tim, her really bad VP pick. Let's not have World War III because that's where we're heading."
I love that he's back.
Oh, we're all back. We are so back. It's 6:23.
Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:36. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in on a busy Monday morning as we approach a very different presidential election than we did on Friday when we last met. Now that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has suspended his campaign, thrown his support to Donald Trump, what difference will it make? We'll talk about that as the morning develops. Coming up at 7:05, Joe DeGenevieve will be here. And at 7:35, Tom Fitton will be here. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Welcome back from your vacation.
Well, thank you.
Our long national nightmare is over. Julie Gunlock back where she belongs. Joining us right now is Chris Pilkerton. He's a former acting administrator of the Small Business Administration, author of Pandemic, COVID, PPP, and a small business prescription for the next global economic crisis. Jeez. Come on, Eeyore. Lighten up. How are you, Chris? Good to talk with you.
I'm great. Larry, Julie, great to be with you.
So Jerome Powell said on Friday that the time has come for a rate cut this September. Color me cynical, but it's amazing how that timing comes right up against the presidential election. Am I wrong to be cynical? I mean, what economic indicators has finally compelled Chairman Powell to contemplate an interest rate cut?
Yeah, there's certainly a school of thought out there with respect to timing. But that having been said, we did see the economic indicator that the jobs revision went down about 818,000 year over year. So, Chairman Powell was pretty clear. Sometimes in these speeches, it's sort of a read between the lines, but he was pretty clear that a rate cut's in the works. And if you listen to what the various Fed presidents are saying, it's going to be happening, and it's going to be happening sort of slow and regular to sort of cool where we are and ultimately get the labor market back where it should be. Is
there a concern, though, about the repercussions and boomerang effect will have on inflation? Because inflation is not getting any better necessarily. I mean, it's increasing at a slower rate or lower rate, but it's still not great.
Yeah, and I think that's been one of the biggest issues, of course, that has been weighing down the economy. And when you look at sort of the small business impact, for example, the NFIB Small Business Optimism Index has shown that that's forced small businesses to raise prices, which has impacted their sales volumes and, of course, could impact hiring, which circles back to the same issue that Chairman Powell was talking about. Of course, in the short term, these things are going to help when it comes to mortgage rates and perhaps, lending and some consumer spending for things like cars and credit cards and things like that. But you're right. Inflation is sort of the biggest issue out there.
Well, I think when you say mortgage rates, I think that's music to a lot of people's ears because it's been such a tough real estate market. I mean, at this point, people are buying with cash. They're not even trying to get a mortgage. So what kind of impact do you suspect this might have on the lending industry?
So the way Chairman Powell talked about it, I think that the 25 basis points cut is kind of baked into the cake at this point. You're seeing a strong futures opening this morning. But that's still going to take the 30-year rate from an average of, maybe 6.5% to something around 6.3%. And then that's in the 30-year. And then in 15-year, probably from around 6 to just under 6, 5.7, something like that. So we're still looking at rates that are, at least over the last few years, still pretty high. But, at the end of the day, people are selling their homes, baby boomers wanting to get out of their homes, and, new families wanting to get into them. So that market will be really interesting. And we'll also see this week some new data around personal consumption and then the home price index, all of which will be very relevant to whether this cut is 25 or 50. And like I said, I think it's going to be 25. Some people talk about 50, but if you start cutting too much too soon, then people are going to start asking, well, what does the Fed know about the economy that I don't know?
So if somebody's investing, because one interesting thing about these increased interest rates, sir, over the last couple of years now that we've grown accustomed to, is that through CDs, through even just high-yield money markets, people have made a shift in their investment strategy, and they've diversified, not just in the market, but also in some of these safer cash positions. Is this going to have an impact on those investments?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I think if you start seeing lending rates going down, cost of money going down, then you may see more money going into the market. If you listen to what some of the sort of large firms have been talking about, it's not necessarily time to take money off the table, but it may be time to play more of a defensive strategy.
All right. And just politically, because you served in a cabinet, so you understand the politics of these things, who does this benefit?
So I think, when I think of it from the small business perspective, and you mentioned my book, Plandemic, which really focuses on the need for resilience around economic crises. And we talk about it in the context of a pandemic, but the reality is economic crises happen. And so you need the sort of small business ecosystem to be strong. And one of the reasons you really need to talk about that, it's not just about votes for the candidates, but it's also about planning, right? I mean, for small business, they really need to know what the tax policies, for example, are going to be with the candidates. I think, President Trump has absolutely been out there talking about it, and there's a track record associated with it. When I was at the SBA, we were working under a very low interest rate environment, very favorable tax policy, and small businesses were able to invest into their businesses and into their employees. So I think it's important when you talk about who does it benefit, that the candidates get out there and really talk about what they're actually going to do. The platitudes about helping small business owners are wonderful, but the actual plans and the specifics are where the rubber meets the road.
All right, Chris Pilkerton, former acting administrator of the SBA and also author of Plandemic, as you just heard, deftly plugged in the middle of that answer. Thank you, Chris. Great talking with you.
Thanks so much.
WMAL, more than just politics, because laughter is the best medicine. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
We've got some updates on the Secret Service, as we have promised you, even though the rest of the media seems to be ignoring the fact that Donald Trump, it's just been 6 weeks now, dodged an assassination attempt. It's kind of a big story. We told you on Friday that at least 5 Secret Service officials involved in that planning of the Butler rally were put on administrative duty. We had Susan Crabtree on to talk about that. So Judicial Watch has received records now from a FOIA request revealing that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is prioritized for every single agency employee. It's ingrained in them. They've gone through all these trainings, all of the the major message coming from the new management at Secret Service over the course of the last several years has been that DEI is their number one priority. It's called, quote, every action, every day, which, again, it's instilled in management. It's instilled in the people who are operating in this critical agency that's supposed, they have one job. And they have a couple of jobs. Strangely, Secret Service also handles like currency. What's the word I'm looking for?
Theft and printing money counterfeit.
Counterfeit
Thank
is the
you.
word. Counterfeit currency issues, because they used to be under the Department of Treasury.
That's right.
But to put it succinctly, their job is to protect the president, vice president, and candidates and other cabinet members. And that's not what they wake up to every day. It's not what they eat at every meal together. It's not what they go to bed to praying. It's every action, every day, DEI, all agency employees. And it's exactly what we feared.
Yeah, this is revealing, but it's interesting. A story broke this weekend that finds that DEI is the number one priority of the Department of Homeland Security as well. And you think about these agencies, which have, I would say, one of the most important missions, and that is protecting very high-level political officials, and they are putting that second to these DEI goals, which is people also need to understand when we say DEI, it's not just appreciating diversity and all this. I mean, it's corrosive. It creates tension in the office, and it elevates people who are not qualified entirely because of the color of their skin or their sex,
right,
and
or their physical abilities.
This is very dangerous,
and it implants in the minds of other people who have been there for many years that the person shoulder to shoulder with them
is not
protecting
qualified.
Their lives shouldn't really be there.
That's right,
and that it does have a corrosive effect is a great way to put it. Thank you. There shouldn't be any doubt when you're in the Secret Service about things like this. Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch, who was able to get this FOIA request assembled and delivered, will be joining us to talk about it at 7:35. Now, Susan Crabtree also had an update on this with regard to the disgraced former Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle. Apparently, she was, according to Susan Crabtree's sources at Real Clear Politics, she was planning to leave the agency in December and had pushed so hard on her DEI initiative called the 30 by 30 Project. That means 30% women agents and officers in the agency by 2030, that she had already reached 24% women by the time she resigned after the assassination attempt on Trump's life. Judicial Watch has now revealed how entrenched that DEI priority became at the agency under Cheadle's leadership in this deeply reported FOIA-driven piece. And she points to it, Susan Crabtree points to it, but that's, she was just named in 2021 as the director of Secret Service, and she took over the reins and decided the priority here is to make sure we have more women.
And we have seen the effects of that. We've seen there was the case in April of a female Secret Service agent having essentially a nervous breakdown and becoming violent with her colleagues while they were waiting at a hangar for the vice president to arrive.
At Joint Base Andrews, yeah.
Yes, and acting totally erratically. She had a sidearm with her. And again, this was a woman. Then we have the case of the Trump near assassination. Right. A woman, a female Secret Service agent, was in charge of that outdoor rally. And look what happened.
And it's not to say that women can't be Secret Service agents. It's meant to say that if your priority as the director of the Secret Service is to increase the number of women on the job, then your priority isn't making sure that the agency is equipped, trained, staffed fully, and operating at its peak performance to do its one job, which is to protect the president and the candidates, et cetera, because you have articulated to the entire agency that the priority is not that. The priority is making sure women are on the job. Maybe the priority still needs to be the protection of the protectees. And then, and by the way, it'd be great to increase the number of women. But that was not what was articulated. But one more quick one here. Josh Hawley, senator of Missouri, over the weekend revealed that a whistleblower said that the agents working the Butler, Pennsylvania event, they were told not to request additional manpower resources for the rally and warned any such requests would be denied. This contradicts Director Rowe's testimony in front under oath in Congress. 6:52.